a piece of footage surfaced online that has the cryptid community divided. Trail camera footage from Missouri shows what appears to be a wolf pup climbing a tree in broad daylight, but something about the creature looks fundamentally wrong. The way it moves, the way it grips the bark, the proportions of its body, none of it adds up to any known animal. If this footage is genuine, it might be the first clear documentation of a juvenile dogman captured on camera. Before we go further, make sure you subscribe and let us know what you think about this footage in the comments. Your perspective matters because this is one of those cases where the community needs to weigh in. The implications of this being real are staggering, and the questions it raises are ones we all need to consider. The footage first appeared on several cryptid forums and social media groups within days of each other. Multiple accounts posted it, some claiming to have received it from a friend in Missouri, others saying they found it on an obscure hunting forum. The original source remains unclear, which immediately raises red flags for anyone trying to verify authenticity. Trail camera footage usually comes with metadata, location details, timestamps. This clip had almost nothing. What struck researchers and enthusiasts right away was the quality and content of the recording. The footage runs only about 5 seconds, showing a creature perched on a tree trunk during daylight hours. The video quality suggests older trail camera technology, that grainy, slightly washed-out look common to cameras from 10 or 15 years ago. The forest appears to be typical Missouri woodland, with pine trees and dense understory vegetation creating a green backdrop. The creature itself defies easy classification. At first glance, it resembles a wolf pup or perhaps a large dog. The head has that distinctly canine shape, with a pronounced snout and pointed ears. The fur appears dark gray to black, thick and somewhat shaggy, but the similarities to known canines end there, replaced by details that become more disturbing the longer you examine them. The most immediately obvious anomaly is the fact that this creature is in a tree at all. Wolves do not climb trees. Dogs do not climb trees beyond perhaps scrambling onto low branches in pursuit of prey. Bears climb trees. Wildcats climb trees. Primates climb trees. But a canine with the facial features clearly visible in this footage should not be doing what this creature is doing. Yet there it is, gripping the trunk with 4 limbs, positioned vertically on the bark. The climbing technique shows remarkable capability. The creature uses its hind legs to push itself upward against the tree, displaying significant power in those rear limbs. The musculature must be extraordinary to support that kind of vertical movement while maintaining grip. The front limbs appear to provide steering and balance more than primary propulsion, though they clearly have enough strength and dexterity to grip the rough bark. This distribution of climbing mechanics suggests a body built differently from normal canines. Between movements, the creature pauses and looks around, turning its head to scan the surroundings. The behavior seems cautious, almost curious, like a young animal still learning about its environment. The eyes catch the light in several frames, showing that distinctive eyeshine that appears amber or yellow gold. Canine eyes can reflect light, but something about these eyes seems larger, more forward-facing than a typical wolf or dog would have. The positioning suggests binocular vision, depth perception, the kind of eye placement you see in predators that need to judge distances precisely. When the footage first started circulating, the comment sections exploded with theories and arguments. Some viewers insisted it was clearly just a wolf pup or a husky puppy that someone had placed in the tree for an internet hoax. They pointed out that the internet is full of staged animal videos, and this wouldn't be the first time someone tried to pass off manipulated footage as something mysterious. Others noted that no responsible wildlife enthusiast would handle a wolf pup or stress a domestic dog by forcing it into a tree for a video. A significant portion of commenters focused on the biomechanics of what they were seeing. Several people claiming expertise in zoology or veterinary medicine weighed in, stating that the limb proportions didn't match any known North American canid. The hind legs appeared too long and powerfully built relative to the front limbs. The spine seemed to curve differently during movement, suggesting flexibility that wolves don't possess. the grip strength required to maintain position on vertical bark implied musculature that shouldn't exist in an animal that looks otherwise canine. Others brought up the environmental context. Trail cameras are motion-activated devices that hunters and wildlife researchers place at strategic locations. They're positioned at game trails, near feeding areas, at water sources, anywhere animals are likely to pass regularly. They're mounted to capture ground-level activity, set at heights that will catch deer, elk, predators moving through their territory. They are not typically aimed up into trees unless monitoring a specific den or nest. The fact that this camera captured footage of something in a tree raises immediate questions about its placement. Was the camera intentionally positioned to film that tree? If so, why? Did someone know or suspect that something unusual frequented that location? Or is this footage actually captured at ground level with the tree visible in the background, and the creature is lower than it appears? The angle makes it difficult to determine the true height of the animal above ground. Perspective can be deceiving in trail camera footage, especially with the wide-angle lenses these devices use. The multiple accounts posting the same footage added another layer of mystery. Some claim to have connections to hunting communities in Missouri who were reluctant to come forward publicly. The supposed original source, according to these accounts, was a landowner who found the footage while reviewing his trail camera recordings after a season of deer activity. He reportedly showed it to a few trusted friends, and from there it leaked into wider circulation before he could control its distribution. Other versions of the story suggested the footage came from a wildlife biologist conducting a study in the Missouri forests. This version claimed the researcher wanted to remain anonymous to avoid professional ridicule, but felt the footage was too important to suppress entirely. The biologist allegedly made copies and shared them with select colleagues, and those copies eventually found their way onto the internet through third and fourth-hand transfers. A third narrative circulating online suggested the footage was found on a camera that had been placed years ago and forgotten. A hiker supposedly discovered the abandoned trail camera, retrieved the SD card, and found this clip among hours of ordinary wildlife recordings. The hiker then posted it online seeking identification help, genuinely unsure what they were looking at. Each version of the origin story had just enough plausibility to be believable, while remaining conveniently unverifiable. To understand why this footage generates such intense interest, you need to understand the Dogman phenomenon and its particular connection to Missouri and the broader Midwest. Dogman sightings have been reported across North America for centuries, with notable concentration in certain regions. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Missouri form a kind of triangle of frequent encounters, though reports come from virtually every state with significant forest coverage. The Dogman differs from werewolf legends in crucial ways. Werewolves of folklore transform from human to wolf and back, cursed beings caught between two forms. Dogmen, according to witness accounts, are something else entirely. They appear to be bipedal canids, creatures that walk upright as their natural stance, not humans transforming, but animals that evolved or developed along a different path from known canines. The creatures stand 6 to 8 feet tall on average, with powerful builds and digitigrade legs that bend backward like a dog's but support upright posture. Descriptions consistently mention the head as distinctly wolf-like or dog-like, with a pronounced muzzle full of visible teeth, pointed ears, and eyes that glow or reflect light with unusual intensity. The body shows both canine and primate characteristics. Broad shoulders and chest suggest upper body strength unusual for quadrupeds. Long arms end in hands or paws with apparent dexterity, capable of gripping and manipulating objects. The entire form suggests a predator built for versatility, capable of both bipedal pursuit and quadrupedal speed. Missouri has a particularly rich history of canid cryptid encounters. The state's dense forests, numerous caves, and relatively low population density in rural areas create ideal conditions for large predators to remain hidden. Reports date back to Native American traditions, with tribes in the region describing powerful wolf spirits or wolf men that dwelt in the deep woods. Early European settlers continued these accounts, often interpreting what they saw through the lens of werewolf legends brought from the Old World. One of the most famous Missouri Dogman accounts comes from a rural area not far from where this trail camera footage allegedly originated. In that case, a A farmer reported finding livestock killed in ways that didn't match known predators. The kills were savage but showed unusual elements. Fences were torn down with strength beyond typical coyotes or wolves. The animals were partially consumed but also appeared to have been killed with almost personal violence, not the efficient predation of natural hunters. The farmer eventually reported seeing the creature responsible, describing a massive wolf-like being that stood on its hind legs and watched him from the tree line before dropping to all fours and vanishing into the forest. Other Missouri encounters focus on close-range sightings. Motorists driving rural highways at night report massive dog-like creatures crossing the road upright, moving with speed that seems impossible for anything that size. The creatures often pause in the middle of the road, turn to face the vehicle's headlights, and observers describe eyes that reflect red or yellow-green in the beams. Then the creatures simply bound away, covering ground with leaping strides that carry them into the darkness beyond the reach of the lights. Hunters represent another significant source of Dogman reports in Missouri. People who spend extensive time in the woods, who know the normal sounds and behaviors of forest wildlife, report encounters that shake them fundamentally. They describe being watched by something intelligent, something that understands what they are and what they're doing. They hear vocalizations that sound like no wolf or coyote, howls that carry too much depth, too much volume, almost a resonance that seems unnatural. Some report finding enormous canine-like tracks that show claw marks, but also suggest a plantigrade stance, the heel touching down like a human or bear rather than the digitigrade walking of typical canids. The folklore suggests these creatures are more than simple animals. Witnesses often report a sense of intelligence in their encounters, a feeling that the dogman assessed them and made a conscious decision about how to respond. Some accounts describe creatures that seemed curious, observing humans without aggression. Others involve clear territorial displays, the creatures making themselves known to drive intruders from areas they claim. The most disturbing reports involve deliberate intimidation, creatures that follow people through the woods, pace vehicles on isolated roads, or approach structures at night, testing boundaries and gauging reactions. Native American traditions in the Midwest speak of wolf spirits with great respect and significant fear. These were not animals to be hunted or trifled with. They were beings that existed between the physical and spiritual worlds, capable of great harm but also great wisdom. Rituals and offerings were made to appease them, to ask for safe passage through their territories. The traditions warned against disrespecting these creatures, against invading their spaces without proper preparation and mindset. Those who ignored the warnings faced consequences. Returning to the trail camera footage with this context makes the implications clearer. If this is genuine documentation of a juvenile dogman, it represents something unprecedented. Adult dogman sightings, while compelling, remain anecdotal. Witnesses see something, report it, but produce no physical evidence. Tracks can be dismissed as misidentification or hoaxes. Hair samples come back as known animals or prove inconclusive. Photographic evidence is always distant, blurry, or questionable. But juvenile animals behave differently from adults. They're less cautious, more curious, still learning the lessons that keep them hidden. A young dogman climbing a tree in daylight, captured clearly by a trail camera, would confirm what thousands of witnesses have reported for generations. But that's a massive if. The question of authenticity hangs over every frame of this footage. Let's examine the evidence for it being genuine and the evidence suggesting hoax, starting with factors that support authenticity. The behavior shown matches no known animal. A wolf pup could not and would not climb like this. The body proportions appear wrong for any domestic dog breed. The setting looks genuinely wilderness, not a controlled environment where someone might stage footage. The camera angle and quality suggest legitimate trail camera equipment, not something filmed deliberately with consumer video gear. The creature's movements show natural fluidity. It doesn't move like something being manipulated or controlled. The way it grips the bark, shifts its weight, turns its head to scan surroundings. All of this behavior flows in ways that would be extremely difficult to fake with puppetry or CGI. The lighting is consistent throughout, showing real outdoor conditions with natural shadows and depth. If this is a hoax, it's an extremely sophisticated one requiring resources and expertise beyond typical internet fakery. However, arguments against authenticity are equally compelling. The complete lack of verifiable origin immediately raises suspicion. No trail camera footage appears without context. The devices record to SD cards that contain multiple files, metadata, timestamps, sometimes GPS coordinates. Where is all that supporting data? Why do we only have this 5-second clip without any of the usual documentation? The multiple contradictory origin stories suggest coordinated disinformation, or at minimum a game of telephone that has completely obscured any truth. The specificity of the camera placement is perhaps the strongest argument for hoax. Trail cameras capture what passes through their field of view. This camera's field of view includes a tree trunk at a height and angle perfect for filming a creature climbing. That's remarkably convenient. If someone wanted to fake Dogman footage, staging it in a tree makes sense. It provides an excuse for why we've never seen this before. Why adult dogmen aren't filmed. They're in trees, above the normal sightlines. It also explains behaviors like climbing that can be attributed to the creature's supposed difference from normal canines. The technical quality raises questions both ways. The grainy, dated appearance could be genuine older trail camera footage, but it could also be deliberate degradation to hide details that would reveal fakery. Lower resolution and compression artifacts make it harder to analyze fur texture, muscle movement, anatomical details that might expose a costume or puppet. The brief duration is similarly ambiguous. 5 seconds is frustratingly short for analysis, but conveniently prevents extended scrutiny that might reveal inconsistencies. Online debates dissected every aspect of the footage frame by frame. Some analysts focused on the eyes, arguing that the eye shine and positioning didn't match any known animal, but also noting that colored contact lenses and reflective material could create similar effects. Others examined the fur, looking for patterns suggesting costume construction or natural pelt. The limb articulation became a major point of contention. Does the creature's grip on the tree show individual digit movement, or is it more consistent with paws or gloves that have limited flexibility? The tree itself received attention. Researchers tried to identify the species, estimate the size, determine where in Missouri such trees commonly grow. The bark pattern might offer clues about the creature's true size and height above ground. If the tree is smaller than it appears, the creature might be closer to ground level, potentially making the climbing less impressive and the footage easier to fake. But without knowing the exact location, definitively identifying the tree species and size remains guesswork. Environmental audio was absent or stripped from the shared footage, another suspicious element. Trail cameras typically record sound along with video. Natural forest sounds would help establish the legitimacy of the setting. They would also capture any sounds the creature made. Vocalizations that might offer insights into its nature. The silence of the footage, whether originally recorded without audio or edited to remove it, prevents that layer of analysis. It's a convenient omission if the goal was to prevent detection of human voices, equipment sounds, or other indicators of staging. Skeptics propose several specific hoax scenarios. The most common suggestion involved a taxidermied animal, perhaps a wolf pelt from a hunted animal, dressed over a frame and positioned in the tree. Modern taxidermy can create remarkably lifelike results, and the right mounting techniques could produce something that looks alive in still frames or brief video. The counterargument points to the creature's visible eye movement and subtle shifts in position that suggest living tissue, not stuffed skin. But high-end animatronics could theoretically produce those effects, though the cost and expertise required would be substantial. Another theory suggested a trained dog, possibly a husky or Malamute mix, with makeup and prosthetics to alter its appearance. Dogs can be trained to perform unusual behaviors for treats and praise. A talented animal trainer with Hollywood-level makeup skills could potentially create something that looks cryptid-like on camera. The problems with this theory include the apparent climbing ability and the visible anatomical differences from normal dogs. Even with training and prosthetics, certain biomechanical realities can't be faked. The limb proportions and movement patterns don't quite fit a dog costume scenario. Digital manipulation remained possible but seemed unlikely given the footage characteristics. Modern CGI can create anything, but it leaves traces that analysis can detect. The lighting interactions, shadow consistency, and motion blur all appear natural to the camera's recording specifications. If this is CGI, it's professional-grade work that would have required significant time and money. Why invest that level of resources into creating 5 seconds of footage that circulates without clear financial gain or publicity strategy? Most CGI hoaxes are either obvious attempts at viral fame or polished productions meant to promote something. This footage fits neither pattern. The question of motivation becomes central to evaluating authenticity. If this is a hoax, what does the hoaxer gain? There's no clear profit motive. The footage isn't monetized, and the anonymous release prevents anyone from claiming credit or building a following. Attention-seeking hoaxes typically want recognition, but the multiple contradictory origin stories and lack of a clear source suggest someone actively avoiding attention. That's unusual behavior for a hoax perpetrator. Could this be a legitimate wildlife researcher or hunter protecting their identity while sharing something they believe is important? That scenario makes sense given the stigma around cryptid claims. Professional reputations get destroyed when people report Dogman sightings. Academic careers end, hunting guides lose business, wildlife biologists get laughed out of their fields. Someone who captured genuine footage of an unknown creature might very well release it anonymously through multiple channels to ensure it's circulated while avoiding personal consequences. The alternative is that this represents something genuinely unknown, not necessarily a dogman in the traditional sense, but perhaps an undocumented species or a known species exhibiting unusual behavior. Could this be a wolverine, which do climb trees? The body shape doesn't quite match, and wolverines aren't common in Missouri. Could it be a bear cub, filmed at an angle that makes it look more canine? Bears climb readily, but the visible head structure looks distinctly wolf-like, not bear-like. Could it be an escaped exotic pet? Perhaps a wolf-dog hybrid or even something more unusual? Wealthy people keep all kinds of illegal exotic animals, and escapes happen. But what exotic canid climbs trees like this? Each conventional explanation requires dismissing multiple visible details that don't fit. The footage shows something that looks canine, but acts in ways canines don't act, with body proportions that don't match standard canine anatomy. If it's not what it appears to be, it's masterfully faked, or it's something else equally strange but not cryptid-related. The Occam's razor approach suggests we're either looking at sophisticated fakery or at something genuinely anomalous. Regular animals behaving normally don't generate this level of confusion and debate. The Missouri Department of Conservation, when questioned by curious citizens, maintains no official position on Dogman reports. They acknowledge receiving occasional unusual sighting reports, but attribute them to misidentification of known animals, typically black bears seen at odd angles or in unusual situations. Missouri's black bear population has been recovering in recent decades, leading to more frequent encounters, and bears can look remarkably different from various perspectives. A bear standing on hind legs or moving through underbrush can create a momentary impression of something more humanoid or wolf-like. However, wildlife biologists who have examined this particular footage privately expressed puzzlement. Off-the-record conversations with people in the field reveal that this doesn't match their identification parameters for any common Missouri animal. The climbing technique specifically doesn't fit typical bear behavior. Bears use their claws and body weight differently when ascending trees, hugging the trunk and using more of their upper body strength. This creature's climbing mechanics suggest a different biomechanical approach, more similar to primate climbing but with the added power of those prominent hind legs. The cryptid community remains divided but increasingly intrigued. Some longtime Dogman researchers view this as potentially the most significant footage ever captured. They argue that the clarity, the daytime setting, and the extended view of the creature in motion provide unprecedented opportunity for analysis. They point out that hoaxers typically make their fakes too perfect, too clear, too dramatic. Real wildlife footage has an ordinary quality to it, a mundane aspect despite capturing something remarkable. This footage has that character. It looks like someone just happened to catch something unusual on their game camera, not like someone set out to make the perfect cryptid video. Skeptics within the community worry that accepting this footage as genuine without verification sets a dangerous precedent. The cryptid field struggles with credibility issues. Every hoax that gets promoted as real damages the community's ability to investigate legitimate phenomena. They argue that without source verification, metadata, witness testimony, or physical evidence from the site, accepting this as genuine Dogman documentation is premature. Wait for better evidence, they counsel. Don't jump on every piece of footage that appears online. What makes this particular case frustrating is the impossibility of further investigation. Without knowing the specific location, researchers can't visit the site. They can't look for additional evidence, check for tracks, examine the tree for claw marks or fur samples. They can't interview the supposed original source. The footage exists in isolation, disconnected from context, impossible to verify or falsify definitively. That ambiguity might be intentional, or it might be an unfortunate consequence of how the footage leaked. If we assume for a moment that this is genuine footage of a juvenile dogman, what does it tell us? First, it confirms that these creatures reproduce and raise young, suggesting a viable population rather than isolated anomalies. Cryptid species need breeding populations to persist across generations. Finding a juvenile implies there are adults, probably multiple adults, maintaining territory and protecting their offspring. That raises questions about where these populations live, how they remain hidden, what they eat, how they interact with human-altered landscapes. The daytime activity is noteworthy. Most dogman sightings occur at night or twilight, leading to assumptions that these creatures are primarily nocturnal or crepuscular. A juvenile out during full daylight suggests either that young dogmen haven't yet learned to avoid daytime exposure, or that in secure territory they feel comfortable moving about regardless of time. The climbing behavior might be a juvenile activity, young animals learning their physical capabilities and exploring their environment. Adult dogmen in witness accounts rarely mention tree climbing, but that could be because adults are too heavy, or because they've learned other strategies for surveillance and hunting. The apparent curiosity in the creature's behavior, the way it pauses to look around, suggests intelligence and awareness beyond typical animal cognition. It's not just climbing mechanically, it's assessing its surroundings, processing information, perhaps learning about threats and opportunities in its environment. That kind of complex behavior supports the idea that dogmen are highly intelligent, possibly approaching human-level cognition in some aspects. That would explain their success at remaining hidden, their apparent ability to avoid trail cameras and hunters under normal circumstances, their reported tendency to outthink pursuers. If dogmen exist and possess this level of intelligence, they might teach their young specific survival strategies. Avoid humans, stay out of sight, move through terrain in ways that minimize detection. A juvenile captured on trail camera might have been displaying age-appropriate behavior, climbing a tree because young animals explore, but caught because it hadn't yet mastered the evasion techniques that keep adults undetected. Adult dogmen might know to avoid trail cameras, recognizing the devices as human technology. A juvenile might lack that learned awareness. The question then becomes whether this footage represents a one-time lucky accident or whether more footage exists. If this clip came from a camera that recorded regularly in that location, there might be other clips showing the same individual or even family groups. The supposed original source keeping that additional footage private would make sense if they feared the attention, the skeptics, the flood of cryptid enthusiasts who would descend on their property seeking evidence. People who live in rural areas often value their privacy and peace. Having trail camera footage go viral would destroy both, but from a research perspective, additional footage would be invaluable. Seeing the creature at different times, possibly with adult dogmen, observing behaviors and interactions, all of that would build a much stronger case. A single 5-second clip, no matter how intriguing, remains just a curiosity. Multiple recordings from the same location showing consistent, impossible-to-fake behaviors would be transformative. They would force serious scientific investigation, regardless of the stigma. The weight of evidence would become too great to ignore. What should viewers take away from this footage? First, approach it with appropriate skepticism, but also with open minds. Demanding absolute proof before considering possibilities is as closed-minded as accepting every claim without evidence. This footage exists. Something is in that tree. What that something is remains uncertain, but dismissing it without analysis doesn't serve truth. Examine the details, consider the possibilities, weigh the evidence for and against different explanations. Second, understand that if creatures like Dogman exist, they've managed to avoid definitive documentation for generations. They would be masters of their environment, intelligent enough to recognize and avoid threats, capable of remaining hidden in terrain that seems impossible for large predators to inhabit undetected. Finding clear footage of one, especially a juvenile, would be rare by definition. The lack of abundant clear evidence doesn't disprove existence. It might simply confirm remarkable evasion capabilities. Third, recognize that wildlife science continues discovering species we thought we knew everything about. Large mammals believed extinct turn up alive. New behaviors in familiar species get documented regularly. The natural world holds surprises even in areas we think we understand completely. Missouri forests are extensive, and significant portions remain relatively wild and unexplored. A small population of unknown predators could persist if they possess the right combination of intelligence, caution, and adaptability. The footage raises more questions than it answers, and that might be its most valuable contribution. It forces us to examine our assumptions about what's possible, what exists, what we might be missing. It reminds us that witness testimony, while not proof, shouldn't be automatically dismissed. Thousands of people have reported Dogman encounters over decades. Are they all mistaken, lying, or mentally ill? Or might they be observing something real that science hasn't yet acknowledged? For now, this Missouri trail camera footage remains an enigma. It shows something that looks wrong, acts wrong, shouldn't exist based on known zoology. Whether it documents a juvenile Dogman, represents sophisticated fakery, or captures something else entirely unknown, remains open to interpretation. Each viewer must examine the evidence and reach their own conclusions. What do the proportions tell you? Does the climbing technique look natural or staged? Can you explain what you're seeing with conventional animals and conventional explanations? Or does something about this footage strike you as genuinely anomalous? The debate will continue as long as the footage circulates. Frame-by-frame analysis will proceed, with some analysts finding proof of authenticity and others finding evidence of hoax. Without additional context, definitive answers remain elusive, but that uncertainty is part of what makes cryptid research compelling. We're not dealing with easily answered questions. We're grappling with possibilities that challenge our understanding of reality. If you watch this footage and see only a hoax, that's a reasonable position based on the lack of verification and the history of fake cryptid videos. If you watch and see potential evidence of something extraordinary, that's equally reasonable given the visible anomalies and the consistency with long-standing witness reports. The truth, whatever it turns out to be, lies somewhere in the details we can observe and the questions we can ask. So examine the footage yourself. Look at the creature's eyes, the way they catch light. Study the limb proportions and the gripping technique. Consider the setting and the camera placement. Think about the origin stories and what they might suggest. Weigh the arguments for and against authenticity. Then form your own conclusion, keeping in mind that certainty in either direction might be premature. What do you think you're looking at? Is this a wolf pup impossibly climbing a tree? A sophisticated hoax designed to fool cryptid enthusiasts? A known animal creating a moment of confusion? Or something genuinely unknown? The answer matters because it speaks to larger questions about what shares our world, what we've failed to notice, and what remains hidden in the forest we thought we understood. For more content exploring mysteries like this, make sure you subscribe. These cases require community input and discussion. Your analysis might catch details others missed. Your perspective might offer insights that shift the conversation. Together we can work toward better understanding of what's possible, what's probable, and what remains unexplained despite our best efforts to categorize and comprehend. The trail camera sits somewhere in Missouri, perhaps still recording, perhaps long since removed. The tree stands in a forest that holds its secrets close, and somewhere in that landscape, if the footage is genuine, A juvenile dogman might still climb, explore, learn the lessons that will help it survive and remain hidden. Or maybe none of that is true, and we're looking at clever fakery that succeeded in generating exactly this kind of speculation and debate. Either way, the footage exists, the questions persist, and the search for truth continues.